Hi, Keith here with Rebel Civics on Unsafe Space. Today I'm going to cover the Nord Stream pipeline saga. I'll do a summary of the pipelines, some background, what they are, who owns them, what they've been used for, what they're capable of, what they could be doing right now, and the September 2022 sabotage, where 3 of the 4 were taken out of service by undersea targeted demolition. And I'm going to cover the 3 possible culprits that have been blamed so far in the stories. One was Russia did it, the first story we heard. Then second, the Seymour Hersh article, investigative journalist Hersh on the U.S. Navy and CIA operation, his story on how that happened with tons of details. Or the German government story reported by Der Zeit Online and parroted, I guess, by many other mainstream media and, of course, the White House, that 6 researchers on a sailboat they rented from Germany did it. Those are the 3 so far. I'm going to then talk about which of those assertions or which of those stories is the most plausible, and which ones pull them apart and see what makes sense and what doesn't. The question really is, do you want to know who did it? I do. This story started because 2 weeks ago, the UN Security Council had a vote, and the Russian Federation had been since early this year formally petitioning the UN for an independent investigation, UN-led independent investigation to find out who did this, where did this come from. The U.S. government so far is not really putting any effort into it. They kind of just washing their hands of it like nothing to see here, folks. The U.S. government, UK government, and some others, they blocked the UN Security Council vote for an independent investigation. So right now there's a couple investigations going on with the German government, the biggest one, but they don't seem all that active. They are looking into it. Also, the governments of Denmark and Sweden are looking into it. What we don't see is a lot of mainstream journalists digging into this. So I don't know if the word's gotten out, but that's not what we're seeing. You'd think taking out what was supplying over half of Germany's gas and oil total, roughly half, taking that out and having a cold winter and having energy prices skyrocket, like up several times. That's a crazy thing. You'd think that the mainstream journalists would be all over this, but they're not. So I've been following this. There's a Rebel Civics show from a couple months ago that I did called Nord Stream and World War III. The question there, I looked into, like, were they trying to start World War III? That was right when Seymour Hersh's article first came out. So it's time for a recap. A lot more has happened in the last couple months. So I've been looking into this, and I wrote an article which was published, first of a series was published yesterday on Uncover DC. This is, I've mentioned this before to listeners, this is a great site to watch for basically Uncover DC. That's nicely describes what they publish here, and I'm one of their authors. So I wrote this article. Right now, if you go to uncoverdc.com, right now it's looks like it's still first in the thing. This was published yesterday. And there was another one by Wendy Mahoney. She writes some great stuff. You want to find out what DC's doing, check out some of the stuff Wendy writes. Anyway, here's my article. I'm going to use this to start from. So the question is, who done it? The suspects here in the Nord Stream, the major suspects, like the first 2 suspects, I thought U.S., UK government. I'm not saying I know who did it, but there's someone asked a question. They say, move along, nothing to see here. So this comes from the UN vote. This was on March 27th, so not just 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago. The US and other UK and some other countries, they denied the Russian Federation's petition for a UN investigation. So what the Security Council met to consider this, it was a resolution, if adopted, would have requested the Secretary General, the UN Secretary General, to establish an independent international investigation commission to conduct a comprehensive, transparent, and impartial international investigation of all acts of the sabotage of Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines, including identification of its perpetrators, sponsors, organizers, and accomplices. This is the Russian Federation that has been pushing for this. Tried in February, formally brought it to the Security Council. It was heatedly debated in February and denied then. And they just brought it up again. They've been discussing it ever since, and it was denied again last week on March 27th. 3 of the Security Council members voted in favor. That's Brazil, China, and the Russian Federation. So you can interpret that how you want. I interpret it, they're saying, at least look into this. Now, the ambassador from Russia said that he believes the UN Secretary General would conduct an impartial investigation. The quote he used was, "I trust them." I don't know if I would go for that, or that it wouldn't have spin and political mix in it, but it'd be more impartial than the US non-existent investigation, as far as we know publicly. Be more impartial than the German government, who don't seem to be looking at this all that intently, from what I can tell. So he's right in that sense. Anyway, there was 3 in favor and 12, they call it abstentions. So the way that the countries block this is by abstaining. So the vote had sufficient in favor, sufficient yes votes to pass, so it gets denied. This is an interesting article. As always, I'll put the links to the stuff I cover in detail in the show notes. I'm probably going to mention a lot of links here that I won't all be in there, but you can find them. A lot of stuff's on Wikipedia that I won't bother to put the links in. So this is the guy, Vasily Nebenzia. Apologies if I'm not pronouncing the Russian name right. He's the UN ambassador from the Russian Federation. He cited the delegation's serious and well-founded doubts in the transparency of the various national investigations currently being conducted by some states. He also noted that they're refusing to cooperate with other countries, such as the Russian Federation. So, the first story that the Russians did this was widely thrown around. Made me laugh when I heard it. But Russia has been pushing all year and even earlier, but formally in the UN since the beginning of this year for an independent investigation. They're watching what's happening with the 3 ongoing ones that we know about, which is Denmark, Sweden, and Germany, and saying that they have serious and well-founded doubts. I already had serious and well-founded doubts about those 3 before I saw this quote. So as far as I could tell, he's right. We should have doubts about these investigations that are ongoing. And I'm going to play some quotes from the German chancellor. He's saying a more transparent investigation is needed. For anybody wants to dig into the details, go to this link. You can go into the objections and the what the various countries said. Basically, their number one thing is they said, well, the states, 3 different states, 3 different call them states, but countries is a more common American English use word, but they call them states often. Sweden, Denmark, and Germany are impartial and transparent. That's what the U.S. Government said, and we should wait for them to finish. There's no reason to do any spurious allegations. The last time that they discussed this, the U.S. ambassador said, there's nothing to see here, that the only purpose of the Russian Federation for asking this is to distract from the real problem here, the invasion of Ukraine, the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So that's what the U.S. UN ambassador from the U.S. has been claiming. That's what the White House claiming, that the reason the Russian Federation has been requesting an investigation is that they want to distract the world from the Ukraine invasion. I hate to break it to them, but I think most people already know about the Ukraine thing. So that's not it. Then you get these other countries, Gabon, Ghana. How these people get on Security Council, I don't know. But yeah, there's some representatives on here. Ecuador, basically, they all just parrot the U.S. Take, except for, I think it was Ghana, said that they're confused about what's going on. They didn't know what to do. Maybe that wasn't Ghana. Maybe it was Gabon. Yeah, it was Gabon. So Michael Xavier Biang says their delegation abstained because it was confused. It's interesting. You think he could have resolved his confusion before the vote by asking a few questions. Um, he said it's a good day for sovereignty of individual states, but a bad day for independence, transparency. I'm not sure what that means. That's the representative of Gabon on the UN Security Council that denied that. The UK, James Kararuki, he said that the sabotage wait for the ongoing investigations to happen. Same with France, same as Albania, same China, though. China's support for the resolution. So it's interesting. China would like it to be public knowledge. And of course, Russia. Russia would like this to be public knowledge. That's the best interpretation I have of this vote. So anyway, interesting question here. Does the U.S. not want us to know? I don't know. Like, why did they just not let the UN do their thing? I don't get that part. Yeah, I'm going to go back to my article and just go through some of this a little more. The vote in the UN to deny it, it's after a year. I mean, this whole problem has been festering. I call it. It's festering half a year, and the background behind this smells something fishy. You might wonder if the U.S. government does not want us to know. It could get messy, right? I said here, like, evidently Washington, D.C. does not want the UN to poke around in this business. It could get messy. What might happen if we found out who did it? It's just a question. All right, I'm going to go through a bunch of stuff here about the pipeline. So this is just all background. Sorry if people are already familiar with all this, but I'll breeze through this so everybody knows what we're talking about. There's 4 48-inch diameter natural gas pipelines. They're 750 miles long. They run under the Gulf of Finland and the Baltic Sea from Russia to Germany. Yeah, 750 miles is basically open ocean in the Baltic Sea. This is a large body of water. The depth at where the explosions are is in 175 to 200 feet, 250 feet, fairly deep, not, ocean, not mid-Atlantic type depths, but it's deep there, deeper than normal scuba diving. There's 4 pipes. They're between 1 and 1.5 inch thick steel encased in 2 to 4 inches of concrete for ballast. So it's a massive structure. I can go through. There's some good pictures in here. Here's that's Angela Merkel. Some of these people you may recognize from following the politicians. Everybody's super happy about these pipelines that they spent. Gazprom, the company that owns it, owns half of it, and Nord Stream AG, the full company of all the various owners. Gazprom owns a controlling. The Russian government owns a controlling majority of just over 50%. But there's a lot of European companies that have a big stake in this. So it's 49% owned outside of the Russian government by individuals and by other entities that have a stake in it. So they're super happy. Here's the gas use. So this is Nord Stream 1. Nord Stream 2 had never been put into service. The U.S. government had strongly resisted, strongly pushed back against this. They did not want Russia to sell more clean gas to Europe. Big, huge resistance. But Nord Stream 1, which was completed years ago, has been in service for, I forget the years, but for quite a while. Here's 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022 data on the flow. So this is in how much natural gas they get from it, gigawatt hours. In 2021, it was about 2 trillion tons of natural gas were transmitted from Russia to Germany in this pipeline. And then after, partway into the war, when this war started, Russia did this in response to the sanctions. So Russia shut the flow off starting in June of 2022. And by September, there was a little bit flowing still, and then it ended. September 2022 is when the Nord Stream 2, both pipes were taken out. And so everything ended there. from whatever. But Russia had throttled it a couple months before that at their end by shutting down the source in response to sanctions. So here's what we're talking about. This is a 4-foot diameter thick steel. This is a big structure. And then it's got concrete. This is ballast to hold it down and protection around the steel. So yeah, this is a 4-foot. They very carefully control the diameter so they can do maintenance. They run robots or something through there. The way it's put together is they weld it. Here's the pipe laying vessel. So this is how it was built. It takes years to build this sort of thing, 750 miles long. So that's what they used to lay the pipe. Here's how they welded it. So they weld the sections together. Here's a map of natural gas reserves, proven natural gas reserves from 2014. Russia has the largest natural gas reserves in the world. So for those who like this clean burning energy, like it's way cleaner than other than oil, say. It's cleaner than natural gas that's derived from fracking. As far as the environmental people's rating on it, this is the cleanest source of fossil fuels in the world. It comes from Russia. It's the largest proven resources, and they're also a huge supplier. Now here's the Nord Stream office building. It's in Switzerland, by the way. Here's the pipelines that come in through Russia. So Gazprom is it's the biggest company in Russia. It's like 36th biggest company in the world. It's a huge thing. And here's all their pipelines. They were supplying gas all over. Now they're still supplying gas to some of these other places, Turkey, China. I don't know, probably nothing in Ukraine now, but the gas is still there. Russia still wants to sell it. So anyway, there's some background on Nord Stream 1. Let's see what the year it was completed here. That's the year it ended. 97 is when they started construction. Started the proposal. 2005. So this went on for many years. So I was going to go through this. All right, I won't go through all this. 2007, 2008. So you can see, just basically, I'm scanning through this. You understand how big this effort was to get this thing going. The nominal capacity of the pipeline. This is Nord Stream 1, which is Nord Stream 1A and B. There's two pipes. Each of the Nord Stream is a pair. 55 billion cubic meters per annum. So it's comes out to 2 trillion. It's 2 trillion cubic feet, not 2 trillion tons. I think I said 2 trillion tons earlier. I want to correct that. It's 2 trillion cubic feet in 2021 were transmitted. Anyway, a lot of gas comes through there. Gazprom, the ticker symbol for that is GAZP. That's the world's largest publicly listed natural gas company. They had 120 billion in sales in 2019. Largest company in Russia, as I said earlier, it's the 36th largest company in the world. It was converted from privatizing by Boris Yeltsin out of the Soviet Ministry of Gas. They converted it to a corporation in 1989. In 2000, Vladimir Putin returned it to state rule by taking a majority of shares. The Russian government shares had got down to somewhere around in a third ownership. They never were non-owners, but Putin returned it by getting up to over 50%. So right now, over 50% is owned by the Russian government. 2017, I found the numbers, 49.8% of the shares are held by investors in foreign stock markets, other legal entities, and individuals. So the Russian government has just over half. I went through, talked about some of this stuff with the natural gas reserves, biggest reserves in the world. 55% of the natural gas and 30% of the oil used in Germany had come from Russia. So Germany was heavily utilizing this super clean natural gas, and 30% of the oil had come from Russia. And also Germany was reselling large quantities of it, the imported natural gas, to other European states. 45% of the natural gas imported by all the European states put together came through Nord Stream. What happened last year? Firewood was a big topic in Germany. Firewood's search and energy prices have skyrocketed. Natural gas was up 2, 3, 4 times, come back down. They totally burned through the reserves. They had a huge amount of natural gas reserve tanks in northern Germany. They burned all that up. Basically, they're looking for other ways to get energy. They're talking about restarting coal plants. They're looking at extending the life of the nuclear plants, bringing old plants online that they had taken off for environmental reasons. Germany's got a lot of problems right now with energy, and the utility bills are way, way up. I'm just going to look at a couple comments here. Paul Campbell, like, yeah, most people on the inside know who did it. Yeah, we're waiting for somebody to admit it. Alvakara said, I had people get pissed off at me when the Russian sanctions were announced because I said Russia had the upper hand here. We told Europe to commit suicide and we're shocked they might turn on us. Yeah. The claim that, the original sanctions that the U.S. imposed on Russia and got some European countries, Germany, for example, and a bunch of other companies to jump in. The ruble is up. So if you want to look at currency moves, a year ago would have been a decent move to like invest in the ruble as soon as the U.S. started going after Russia and sanctions. I'm not giving financial advice, and I didn't do that, but I was wondering at the time, like, are they really sure that they're going to get what they want? Somebody else says, Elvakar again. Yeah, this is good. I didn't know this, that for the oil, a lot of European refineries are set up for crude from the Urals. You don't re-gear a refinery for other grades. You get what is floor, or you blend other grades to match. Yeah, that's been a problem. I'm aware of that problem in Texas refineries when they tried to shut down the tar sands oil from Canada, when they shut down that pipeline. That's a huge problem because the refineries cost a lot of money. It's a tremendous amount of work and a long time. They shut down for a long time to reconfigure a refinery, say to use South American oil, which is cleaner. But if it's designed for a certain type, they can't. I didn't know that about Urals. That's where a lot of the oil comes from. It's also where some cool motorcycles come from for the bikers. Check out the Ural motorcycles that come from Russia. Hardcore, fun stuff. Biden said we're going to destroy the pipeline. I'm going to get to that. That's a fun one. Biden made that totally clear. Let me go back through a little more background here. So as far as the Nord Stream 2. So Nord Stream 2 pipeline, it completed construction in 2021, but it never entered service because it had strong pushback from the U.S. So the U.S. government opposed Nord Stream 2 since the proposal phase. They imposed sanctions on the Nord Stream 2 construction in 2019. In 2021, the National Defense Authorization Act wanted to thwart the progress. That's a quote from what they termed. They added more sanctions. So 2022, U.S. added more sanctions against construction of the pipeline. The European Commission said that the U.S. was threatening Europe's energy supplies. That's a quote. They're threatening. In February 2022, the U.S. imposed more sanctions on Nord Stream 2. So they've been trying to block this since the beginning. The two pipelines, Nord Stream 2 A and B, they were complete and they were pressurized with natural gas, but they never started delivering. They never were used delivering natural gas because under pressure from the U.S., the German government had never certified them. So they never started using them. So this whole setup, the four pipes together, are capable of 4 trillion cubic feet a year of natural gas, clean energy into Germany and into the rest of Europe. Gazprom, through Nord Stream, was about to double the import of natural gas to Europe, into Germany. Germany could have resold a large amount of that. So there's a lot of money here at stake. So when the sabotage occurred, for one, have the numbers on one of them, Nord Stream A, they all were about the same, but Nord Stream 2A had 11 billion cubic feet of natural gas. 11 billion cubic feet. That's what's in this pipeline. 4-foot diameter, 750 miles long. The pressure dropped from 105 to 7 bar. The Nord Stream 2B remained intact. So the demolition on that was not successful. And I show the picture of where that happened. The depth where this is between like 175 to 250 feet. There are 4 different locations the explosions happened in a relatively short amount of time, all on the same day. So this was timed. So these were large amount explosives that were planted. It's a targeted demolition, likely shaped charges. One estimate I saw said they estimated from the sonic signal that is 2,000 pounds of TNT. They've taken pictures of the pipes, and there's like large sections, like 100 yards or something. I forget the number, don't quote me, but large sections are just totally destroyed. Like these were large explosions. You said it's a 1.5 inch thick steel pipe with 2 to 4 inches of concrete around it. Yeah, you don't go bang on that with a hammer. It's quite an operation, and there's 4 different locations in deep water. So, and the idea that Russia would do it, here's where it's at. You can see it's around this Danish island of Bornholm, just off northern Germany. This is Germany here. It's not far from Germany. So they did it very close to the German end and inside Danish and up here in Swedish territorial waters, inside their 12 nautical mile. It's inside the 12 nautical mile limit for Denmark, and this is closer to Sweden. This was all done in secret. So this is interesting. That's why a lot of people looked at this and said, well, this seems like a state actor. Like, this isn't normal terrorism territory, right? This isn't something that a Al-Qaeda type terrorist group pulls off. This is serious. This is elite level terrorism to do this, and do this in secret, and then blow it up later when you're totally out of the picture. So, yeah, I find that interesting. That's why a lot of people first looked at it and thought about that it was taken out by a state actor. Here's another shot of the pipes, just so you get the scale of this thing. These are massive things. This, like I said, you don't go down and bang on this with a hammer. This took targeted underwater demolition, elite level terrorism, and you got to find this thing, 200, 250 feet down in an open ocean. Not an easy task. So anyway, I looked into that. I seemed a little skeptical at first, but anyway, it was in 26 September 2022. The series of bombings happened and all the gas drained out. Now that was the huge amount of gas. They weren't transmitting, but the leak was equivalent to the yearly emission of 5.5 million cars. So whoever took this out, do they actually care about global warming? 5.5 million cars per year. That's what this one event was. The Environmental Defense Fund estimated demolition at 250 million pounds of methane. Methane is it's the largest component in natural gas. And it's a greenhouse gas that's worse than CO2. And that is the largest component in natural gas. And these were pressurized. So anyway, the EDF estimated 250 million pounds of methane released. German estimate put it at 660 million pounds. So this is the largest gas leak in human history by a lot. Like, this is a huge amount. Yeah, again, like whoever did it doesn't care about global warming, that's for sure. I'm not bringing that up as like the key problem here, but obviously they don't care about that. So yeah, somebody tells me to take a couple cars off the road. How about don't blow up pipelines? There's 5.5 million cars off the road for a year. Russia initially did an rough estimate in the 500 million range. So yeah, like $500 million to repair these. Nord Stream AG, the company that built it, they said that a repair might be impossible unless it's done quickly because of saltwater corrosion. They're steel in a saltwater environment. Not good, not good. You want it to be clean in there. So anyway, it's been 6-8 months now. It's been since September. They haven't done it yet. So they haven't even started. They're still looking for who did it. There's been no effort to repair it. Washington Post reported the demolition's likely to put an end to the project. Who knows? But anyway, it's been a while and they haven't even started. So it makes you wonder. As far as I know, they didn't even cap them off. They could have gone down and capped them. They must be thinking those pipes are full of seawater now. So I don't know how to get that out of there, but I'm sure it's possible. The construction cost for Nord Stream 1 was 6 billion euros, and Nord Stream 2 was 10 billion. So we're talking in the 16, I think rounded off is 17 billion euros. Roughly, it's a little more than $1, but yeah. So round that off, 17, 20 million, $20 billion. That's what we're talking about. So somebody took out, say, 16 billion euros of property, 16 billion. They ended 54% of the gas imports into Europe, and they produced greenhouse gases for a year operation of 5 million cars. And the U.S. government's not saying, they're saying, we don't care. That's basically how I interpret their statement. They don't want the UN, evidently, obviously, do not want the UN to find out and tell people. Officially, I interpret the U.S. government as not being interested in knowing. What does that make you wonder? That makes me wonder if they know. Does the U.S. government know and they don't want us to find out? That's what it smells like. If someone took out pipeline that went to the U.S. that was capable of 2 trillion cubic feet a year of clean energy inside U.S. territorial waters, would the White House go, yeah, that's the way it goes? Yeah, Paul Campbell says Seymour Hersh claimed was Biden. I'm going to get to him. Yeah, this is I'm going through a bunch of stuff here. So this is kind of backgrounds. Raphael says, who benefits from blowing up the pipeline, and you find the culprit? I think that's the way that investigators, it's the way that detectives work. They look for motives. Who would have motive? One of the key motives here is the U.S. government announced intent at motive. So yeah, I'm gonna talk about that some too. So this article, I go into this Biden's verbal snafu here. So as a couple people have mentioned here, Joe Biden said if Russia invades, this was in a press conference with German Chancellor Scholz. Biden said, if Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again, then there will no longer be a Nord Stream 2. We will put an end to it. I promise you, you'll be able to do that. That's 2021. That's Joe Biden at a joint news conference on C-SPAN. I was going to play that. That's an astounding statement of intent. I consider that astounding. I have to fiddle with something here to show you the video because I need the audio for this. But I'm gonna show. I probably just shut myself off for a second here. Yeah, kind of Miss Beverly. But anyway, I'm learning to drive this stuff myself. I have to pause me while I think about this here. Okay. Share tab audio. All right. Now I'm going to play this. If you don't hear it, let me know. But anyway, this is astounding what Biden says. I'm going to let it play until what Scholz says afterwards, because Scholz's statement is just as astounding. So Biden issues this quite clear statement of intent. You can tell he's thinking about something. Every once in a while, a neuron fires in Biden's brain, and we actually learn something. Looks to me like his handlers, he got away from his handlers for a minute. So anyway, here we go.
Mr. President, I have wanted to ask you about this Nord Stream project that you've long opposed. You didn't mention it just now by name, nor did Chancellor Scholz. Did you receive assurances from Chancellor Scholz today that Germany will in fact pull the plug on this project if Russia invades Ukraine? And did you discuss what the definition of invasion could be? And then Chancellor Scholz, wenn ich Sie fragen darf,
if I may ask you, Chancellor Scholz, you said there was some strategic ambiguity that was needed in terms of sanctions. I just wanted to know whether the sanctions you are envisaging and the EU is working on, and the US as well, are already finished, finalized, or is there still work ongoing? And
dass Sie das nicht sagen wollen, was genau da drin ist.
You're not really saying what the details are. Is that just an excuse for Germany maybe to not support the SWIFT measures?
Let me answer the first question first. If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control?
We will. I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
Thank you very much for your question.
Now that is an astounding statement of intent to me. He's saying, trust me. Yes, we will end it. That is what he said. It's quite clear. Then the next thing is, she asked a question of German Chancellor Scholz also. What surprised me here, Scholz says nothing. Like, that's so clear. I'll play a little bit of that now, but Scholz does not react. And he doesn't deny it. You listen to Scholz continue. He just talks about how, yes, we're going to, we're part of this. We're on this team. We'll do everything together. We agree. Like, he says nothing about Biden's clear statement of intent. So yeah, you watch this. I'm giving my spin before you've seen it, but check this out. Let me let this continue.
Want to be absolutely clear, we have intensively prepared everything to be ready with the necessary sanctions if there is a military aggression against Ukraine. And this is necessary. It is necessary that we do this in advance so that Russia can clearly understand that these are far-reaching, severe measures. It is part of this process that we do not spell out everything in public, because Russia could understand that there might be even more to come. And at the same time, it is very clear we are well prepared with far-reaching measures. We will take these measures together with our allies, with our partners, with the US, and we will take all necessary steps. You can be sure that there won't be any measures in which we have a differing approach. We will act together, jointly.
This is a good idea to say to our American friends, we will be united, we will act together, and we will take all the necessary steps, and all the necessary steps will be done by all of us together.
All right, I'll stop that there. You've heard that, though. All the necessary steps will be done by all of us together. That's interesting. That's German Chancellor Scholz. So yeah, as somebody said, yeah, Biden said he was going to do it. So the question for an investigator, like, who has motive? Maybe somebody's even mentioned that they might do it, right? Somebody in the detectives, they're thinking, who should we bring in for questioning? Well, here we got somebody that said they would do it. They would do something. He didn't say what he was going to do. He didn't say he was going to blow them up. He said, we will put an end to it. Joe Biden, we will put an end to it. Trust me, we can do that. Basically that's, and German Chancellor's response immediately after that is, yeah, well, we're going to do everything together. Excuse me. Germany's on board. So I get the impression from that statement that Chancellor Scholz knew what was happening. He's part of that, right? He seemed to know what Biden was talking about. And Scholz says, we will be united, we will act together, and we will take all the necessary steps. Scholz said nothing about Joe Biden's statement, quote, there will no longer be a Nord Stream 2. And he spoke immediately after Biden. So how do you take his silence? That's an astounding statement of intent. I interpret silence in that situation as concurrent. So one might suspect Schultz knew what Biden was talking about, but he had the sufficient mental capacity not to blurt it out at a news conference. So sometimes if you listen, people tell you what they're up to. Yeah, neuron fired in Joe Biden's brain there, and seems like we learned something. Anyway, back to the request. So the Russian request, it was heatedly debated and denied in February, and then denied again last week. So the U.S. ambassador, John Kelly, his response was that the request from Russia was a blatant attempt to distract, that's a quote, distract the UN from the real problem, Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So, yep, there's the conspiracy theory. That's from the government that invented the phrase conspiracy theory for propaganda. These are the guys that know nothing about who assassinated Kennedy, right? So anyway, let's talk about who done it. I want to get into this. So one possibility, this is the one that Seymour Hersh brought up, but who was in the area at the time? So if you're going to investigate this, got to develop a list of suspects first. Nobody's owned up to it. So who was around? So who had motive, who was around? So there you go. I just showed you the U.S. motive was clear. Over years, they were trying to stop the Nord Stream. Then Biden said they would stop it. And the German chancellor appears to go along with whatever it was that Biden was thinking. So were they there? Now, here's interesting. In July, the NATO exercise called BATOPS, B-A-T-O-P-S, that's a NATO exercise. They had 45 ships, 75 aircraft, 7,500 people practicing basically destroying Russia in the Baltic. So who was around and had the equipment and personnel to pull off a complex operation like this? Not proof of anything, but bring somebody in for questioning, maybe arouse some suspicions. So anyway, yep, the U.S., the U.K., and other countries, a bunch of other countries. So in the end here, I'm going to go back to my article. What happened, right? What happened here, right? Sorry for me driving here. The way I ended this, and this is part one of a 3-part series on Uncover DC. So these suspects were on the UN's grand jury determining if the crime should be investigated. The suspects determined no investigation should be conducted. Should we be surprised? No. Here's how I ended this first part of the article was, I'm paraphrasing the U.S. government's position. So my interpretation of the U.S. government's position on Nord Stream, nothing to see here. Move along, folks. So the second part of this was just published. I think it was published, actually. I saw it pop up as I started the show. Part 2, I'm going to go through the technical challenges and the 3 different culprits. So I'm just going to talk about them. The question is, who can you blame for this, right? Who really who can we blame? So the 3 stories that have been out so far, the Seymour Hersh story that the U.S. Navy and the CIA did it. Second story, the Russians did it. Nobody's had actually said why clearly or how or anything. There's no details, just Russia did it, Russia did it. Of course, Putin's an evil guy. Then the third story is this German government investigation. German prosecutors, equivalent of the FBI, say that six people on a sailboat did it. They rented a sailboat and did it. So I'm going to go through them. First, I just want to talk about the technical challenge here. So it's a difficult operation, right? So diving, open ocean, finding the pipeline, planning a large amount of target explosives, getting away in secret. Not an easy thing. Not an easy thing to pull off. Like I said, this is not a bunch of, not to be facetious, but bunch of guys from Iraq with goats and AK-47s. Like, they didn't do this, right? This is a sophisticated thing. Maybe it took submarines, maybe not, but definitely need a lot of good equipment. Most people, even that are into scuba diving, don't go down at 250 feet and move thousands of pounds of explosives around and in the open ocean. This isn't an easy thing to do. So anyway, how was it done? So let's talk about the 3 stories so far. So the first one, that Russia did it. That was the first announcement, right? Immediately after the explosions, we heard Russia did it, Russia did it, Russia did it. Everybody's screaming. All the sheep are bleeding it out. All the mainstream TV news, legacy media, New York Times, whatever. Russia did it. Of course, it's obvious that Russia did it. That story first was fed to the White House press corps from, in the White House briefing room. They kind of alleged it, and everybody ran with it, and didn't see much investigations back in September. It was portrayed as the obvious answer. It sounded to me then it's just like the sheep reading the sign of the barn in Orwell's 1984. Why Russia would take out something that was a huge income to the Russian government, that had spent 16 billion euros building, and the opportunity to make lots more money. This whole thing in Ukraine, trade, if they say, if when goods cross borders, troops don't. The military doesn't engage in battles when there's a lot of trade in general. So Russia could have used natural gas as a negotiating point in settling this whole thing in Ukraine for people that want peace. Now, there's no sign the U.S. government wants peace here, so that's probably a factor. Anyway, that makes no sense. As far as the sniff test, Russia doing it made me laugh out loud. And it wasn't just because the White House press secretary and Joe Biden and the New York Times said it, which they did. That was funny in itself. But the reason I laughed at it is it doesn't make sense. So I'm pretty much ready to discount this one. In a Sherlock Holmes mystery, there'd be a Russian in the locked room, and the point of the Russian would be to distract you from recognizing the actual culprit, right? The murderer is just standing there right in your face and you don't even recognize it. And there's this Russian here with a heavy Russian accent, and he's the evil Russian. So that would just be a distraction in a Sherlock Holmes locked room murder mystery. So yeah, I don't really believe that one. Maybe, but that one sounds like a trick. The next one, of course, is the Seymour Hersh story that came out in February. I'm going to bring that one up here. Pardon me. Okay. He published this story on February 8th called How America Took Out the Nord Stream Pipeline. New York Times called it a mystery, but the United States executed a covert sea operation. It was kept secret until now. Until now is him exposing it. Now, this was in February. It's April now. They still haven't fessed up to it. And it hasn't been confirmed. He kept his source anonymous. But here, somebody did this. This was a huge plume. This is the natural gas pouring out of one of the pipeline breaks. Seymour Hersh goes through this in all kinds of detail. Find this article on his Substack, Seymour Hersh. I'll put the link in the show notes that'll show up on the webpage in a while. He goes through the whole story of who did it, the U.S. Navy Diving and Salvage Center, how they train, where they're at. Continue reading. And the details of it, what they can do. 260 feet is a number he puts it on. I think one of them was one spot might have been 175 feet. There's 4 different spots. So, but 2 of them are very close together. Anyway, he goes through this, that it happened in the NATO exercise, and what happened. So yeah, I'm not going to read this, but there's an astounding level of detail in here. For him to make this up, you have to first say that he would invent all of this detail. Now, I have to keep in mind who we're talking about here. This is an investigative journalist with decades of history of exposing corrupt criminal activities by the U.S. government, with a huge number of contacts inside the U.S. government in high positions, and a history of doing things with anonymous sources and not disclosing sources. So anyway, let's just start from there. I know that's kind of the resume argument, which I don't like to do, but if you're not familiar with Seymour Hersh, and I wasn't before this, other than I heard his name, yeah, he's not one to make up a story. People say, well, he's getting old. He probably made all this up. but there's a huge detail. It takes a while to read this. I'm sure not going to do it on the show. You guys would get bored, but I encourage you to go find this article if you haven't read it yet and read it about 3 times. It's stunning. And it makes sense. As far as the sniff test, like, yeah, this makes sense. He talks about the CIA plan, how they didn't want to use the SEALs because to use SEALs, that they're the special operations forces are what the SEALs are, and that has to be disclosed to Congress committees. So they used a elite Navy dive team that trains in Panama City, and they generally do things like, clear harbors of mines. One of the good things, they also do some other things like take out oil rigs and block harbors and that sort of thing. Anyway, they're kind of an elite high-level diving team. Maybe they know more than the SEALs. They're not the ones that they make movies out of, this group. They're the top divers who do stuff that we never know about. So it sounds like that's what a lot of these people are. But they're an elite force of divers, handpicked to not say anything. These are the kind of people that don't tell their wives what they're up to. That's what it sounds like. And he goes through how they found out where they are, the name of the project. I'm just scanning through this. The initial story in the operation, they picked Norway. Norway has a history of going along with U.S. government for operations like this. Norway was one of the first, maybe the first member of NATO. Anyway, Norway's an obvious one to get help with. Do this and stage it from. They have a submarine base there to use submarines. Again, I'm not going to read all this. Here's where Norway is. So, yeah, you got good sea access from Norway. The Baltic is where the NATO operation was done. They set up, according to Hirsch, everything here is according to Hirsch, right? So just add this caveat. They created a diversion by planning a operation that included divers for setting mines or taking out mines related to mine warfare stuff. And then they went and did their thing. That's the claim. Americans and all. Their first plan was to blow them up with timers, but then he says that President Biden and the White House and whoever handles him said that would be too obvious. We got to do it later. And we also want to watch the timing. We don't want to do it in July near this exercise. So this story is what they did is they figured out a way of remote detonating them with a sono buoy drop from a plane. And so they had a P-3 Orion or something like that. Months later in September, dropped sono buoys near where the bombs were planted, and they sent a sonic message to the buoys to go off. Now that in itself is a problem. It's difficult to communicate through the water. That's always been a big technical challenge. I worked on that for a while, and until we finally gave up. It's very like at sea depth communication of a submarine is a technical problem that's never been solved. But you can send low data rate, low frequency sonic signals. That's how whales talk. So technically that's possible. So that's plausible. That part of the story sounds plausible to me. Just going from my electrical engineering experience and spending a few months looking into how to communicate with U.S. submarines at depth. We were trying to use lasers at the time, but sonic, you can do low signal, and that's used for undersea communication, audio type frequencies, super low bandwidth data, a message to some device that could trigger an explosion that's within the technical realm at that kind of depth, 175 to 250 feet. That's my judgment of that. That sounds plausible. As far as the U.S. government doing it, like, that's all plausible. All this stuff passes a sniff test. Here's Victoria Nuland. If you recognize that name, she's becoming more and more famous. She's the one who handpicked the new president of Ukraine when the CIA trained snipers were shooting at the Ukrainian president's car when they ousted him in the 2014 coup, when he escaped by helicopter to Crimea with the distraction. Victoria Nuland was there handing out donuts. And she's the one in that famous phone call that the Russians had released, where she's discussing who they wanted to put in place as the puppet president of Ukraine when they ousted the democratically elected guy that had been neutral. That's Victoria Nuland. So here she is in January after the Nord Stream explosion. Like you, I think, and I think the administration is very gratified to know that Nord Stream 2 is now, as you like to say, a hunk of metal at the bottom of the sea. So that's what Victoria Nuland is happy that Germany can no longer import 4 trillion cubic feet of natural gas a year from Russia. She's happy. She's very gratified. Anyway, that's what the U.S. State Department thinks. Anyway, this is a great article. Yeah, I encourage you to check that out. He's recently sent another one, put out another one called The Cover Up. This is on March 22. So sure, it's been a month and a half now, or after about a month and a half you did this, it's been 2 months, just over 2 months. The Biden administration continues to conceal its responsibility for the destruction of the Nord Stream pipelines. Another good article. This is on Seymour Hersh's Substack again. He said it's been 6 weeks since his report went out on the pipeline and everything. Basically, this is an expose on the cover-up, and he goes through how Germany's not doing anything, United States not doing anything. Here's Schultz and Biden from the conference. Yeah, they're covering it up. All right, I just thought I'd touch on Seymour Hersh for a minute. The guy. This is from 1972. So if you've heard of the My Lai massacre in Vietnam, this is a famous one. Seymour Hersh is the guy that exposed this. It was a mass killing, horrible, horrible thing where Marines had gone in and just murdered large amounts of civilians, just shooting people and putting them in piles and burning their villages. And when this story first started to come out, huge denials, just like impossible, discounted. The military, the White House, all the mainstream media, like, no, they couldn't do it. Then in 1972, in the New Yorker, investigative journalist Seymour Hersh, this is the same guy, he exposed this. And you read this story, it reads a lot like his one on the Ukraine, like same flavor, same kind of thing, anonymous sources. He doesn't say, there are some names in here, but he knows a ton of stuff. And he just goes through the gory, horrible details of what happened, who did what, and how it was covered up. And like for years, this went on. All the companies. Anyway, I won't go through this, but yeah, check out this article. I'll put the link in here for here. So people not familiar with Seymour Hersh, it's a data point. Like, here's something this guy did. This is one of the most famous, huge cover-ups of criminal activity by the U.S. government, basically. And Seymour Hersh is the guy who found it out. He was interviewed on the Scott Horton show about a month ago about his article. And, Scott played devil's advocate and asked him, how come you don't reveal your source? And he says, like, why would you ask me that? Like, he went in and described how he's got a history of people inside the government in high positions that trust him. So he said, yeah, I talked to a source that wouldn't tell his wife or his brother what they're telling me, and they trust me not to say anything. Hersh said in that show, I'll find a link for that and paste it too, but Hersh told Scott Horton that there are a large number of people in the U.S. government who are not happy about what's going on with the U.S. government. They believe in the Constitution as the founders created it, the classical liberal view of what the government should be doing. He said he knows a lot of people in the government that are that way, but they're still there. They're still doing their job, I guess. I don't know. Maybe they're a little hypocritical, but they are people who talk. So he just said there are people who will tell him stuff they would never tell anyone else. That's what he said. That's what he told Scott Horton. I thought it was a good answer. Like, it's plausible. So anyway, if you're wondering if Seymour Hersh is making the whole thing up, yeah, go check that one out. I'm going to read here. Elva Kara says, Nuland is aging to look like her soul. Her parents came from Ukraine, conflict of interest. I didn't know that. Yeah, Nuland doesn't sound like a particularly Ukrainian. Raphael says, who has deep sea special submarines that can do that? England and the US. You need like to recover a diver, to launch and recover a diver, you need a diver lock. So yeah, the US and England have subs that can do that. They have divers that are trained to do that, that can, you know, they're stationed on a boat, or they'll do an operation from a boat, a sub, using the Navy's parlance for that. And they can do deep water dives from the submarine. That saves going up and down. So it helps with having to do in-water decompression. Raphael says Biden meant more sanctions. Now, I don't know what he meant. He smirks at the end. Maybe he meant more sanctions. I don't know. And Rusty, thanks for telling me the audio is okay. I just noticed that. Yeah, I wasn't sure. Again, I miss Beverly's help with making sure audio gets out. That's a special button I have to push. So for me to remember to talk and think about what I'm going to say, and then also remember to push the special buttons, is can be a little bit of an adventure. So anyway, that's kind of Seymour Hersh's take on all this. In the cover-up, Seymour Hersh said, he's asking if Biden, why hasn't Biden done what any serious leader would do? I'm paraphrasing Seymour Hersh's words. So to quote Seymour Hersh, he said, why didn't he formally task American intelligence community to conduct a deep investigation? Why not? Because he knows the answer. So that's a quote from Seymour Hersh on why Biden hasn't done it. Quote, why not? He knows the answer. Maybe. It does make sense. If you're looking at the sniff test, which is all we have to go on, we can't bring any of these people in for questioning. The government, U.S. government actions on a source disclosure, if somebody did admit that they told Seymour Hersh that, or Seymour Hersh disclosed the source, that could go from, say, loss of a job, right? That's kind of the minimum, I would think. It could go to a lifetime in prison. It could be what Julian Assange is under right now for basically doing this. He published true stories, true facts, the truth about criminal activity of the U.S. government as a journalist. As an Australian journalist. His life was ruined. They're still trying to extradite him, but he's been in jail for 10 years for doing that. And nobody even contends that anything he said was false. Like, it was all true. If a insider was exposed by Seymour Hersh or by somebody else, or he admitted it to somebody else, he could end up like Julian Assange. And I'll put the worst case, you could end up suicided at the hands of the CIA. Like, no, I understand why an inside source would want to be anonymous in this story. Yeah, I would want to be anonymous. Anyway, Seymour Hersh's story is at an absolute minimum. It's plausible. You can't say that's not plausible. The U.S. government was there. The U.S. government is capable of doing this. They do secret things like this all the time. Their history is filled with this. The CIA does all kinds of shenanigans along these lines, planning. The Navy has people that can pull it off. The Navy was there just before that. So all that part passes the sniff test. They had support of ally countries nearby. There's Germany, there's Sweden, there's Norway, there's Denmark, all in that area. And they were all there too in force, and they were conducting mine exercises. So that whole story makes sense. All right, the next one I want to talk about. Somebody, I assume this is facetious, somebody says, nonsense, is a ragtag group of Ukrainians. Yeah, they went to the local dive shop and got a mask and fins and planted 2,000 pounds of explosives on 4 pipes in the middle of the sea. Anyway, that's that story. So I rate that as plausible. I'll just leave it at that. We don't know, waiting for confirmation. 70 years or whatever after Kennedy was assassinated, we still don't know the extent of the CIA's involvement, but they were involved. There's no question. Somebody well known to the CIA did it. So anyway, don't be surprised if Seymour Hersh's story gets confirmed, just like it was in the My Lai massacre that he exposed. And that took a long time, like I think a year or two before that came out. And he was vilified in the press by the CIA, by the White House, by the FBI, by politicians, totally vilified, attacked for an extended period of time. And then it came out like, oh man, the whole thing's true. Everything in there is true. Yep. The whole massacre happened. It's one of the worst parts, maybe the worst thing in the Vietnam War. So the Mary, first time watching, thanks. Welcome, Mary. So anyway, there's another story here. This one's fun too to go through. So the next story that came out was from the German press. So there's 3 investigations going on. I've heard essentially nothing from the Denmark and Sweden one. Which is interesting because it happened right there. But no, they don't seem to know anything. At least they haven't released very much. The German prosecutors are investigating this. This was recently released. So there's a German article was just published recently. This is the third possible culprit. So here we go. The German publication of this is called Der Zeit or Die Zeit. It just means the time. It's a TV newspaper or a print version. This is their online article for this. It was von Holger Stark wrote this. Now if you look around, you see all kinds of reports. The New York Times, lots of English language publications are talking about this and reporting on this with all sorts of spin. So the spin that I saw was from the German government found it, to they're not sure, to all kind of different versions. So anyway, I happen to know people who speak German fluently. And I provided this article to someone that I know well and trust. And she read it and talked to me at length with it. So I'm going to talk about this article in that context. Now, I've been to Germany half a dozen times for work. I know enough to get around in the airport and order dinner. So I can pick out a few words here, but yeah, I don't know German. But anyway, what they're saying with the sources. So this is the German publication Zeit, Die Zeit. Their sources here, I'm just going to point these out as I highlighted. So the sources that they're reporting are this ARD, I won't pronounce this right, but Hapag Studio, that's like Studio Central or government studio. This is a TV station in Berlin, very close to the seat of the government, that does a lot of reporting of government activities. It's a political content TV station. So they investigated this and spoke to a lot of sources. And then ARD Politi Magazine, this is a contrast. I think I'm mixing them up. ARD is the written publication. It's a weekly paper. And then you got the Contrast, which is a joint operation. It's between the Federal Broadcasting Network, ARD, and Contrast. That's a TV studio in Berlin. They're close to the government's center. So this is a highly political content TV station magazine show. It's a TV magazine, you're going to call it that. Contrast, that's operated in conjunction with the government. And then the third one is Die Zeit. That's a weekly national newspaper based in Hamburg. Sorry, I mixed them up in the beginning. So Die Zeit is online, is one who published this by this author Stark. So anyway, that's who we're talking about here. These 3 sources. Now, they spoke to sources in a bunch of different countries. So they went through the ongoing German investigation and they reported on it. So the investigation is being done by the BKA, that's the Federal Criminal Police Office of Germany. That's essentially their FBI, and the Attorney General of Germany. So that's where they got the information from. Again, I'm reporting what the person who read this in the original German and also looked at some other links told me in discussions about it. So you can end all this with if you prefer, as reported by blah blah blah. I'm just gonna not bother to keep saying as reported by. So what they're saying in the article is that they found a yacht. So this part is all reported as fact. You might as well take this as fact. The German prosecutors, they searched a sailboat, also called a yacht. They've been calling it a yacht in the press. It was rented by a German research team of 6 people. It was 5 men and a woman. The team, they used professionally faked passports. It was made of a captain, 2 divers, 2 diving assistants, and a medical doctor. And the yacht is owned by a Polish company, which is owned by 2 Ukrainians. And the identity of the crew is unknown. So they haven't figured out who owned who the crew was. So again, they used fake passports that were professionally made. The German investigators, they found the boat on a Danish island. They returned it to Wieck, Germany, in northern Germany. It had departed from northern Germany. Rostock is where it left from, and passed through the area. They know that. And then it was found on this Danish island in a messy condition, they called it. So it was in disarray, apparently, but it was returned. So the owners got the boat back. The report says there's no sign that the Ukrainian government was involved. So they're saying in the Der Zeit article, there's no Ukrainian government or Ukrainian military involvement, or no evidence of that. The international security circles, the report in there, that they have a theory that it was a false flag operation. That's possible. It could have been a false flag operation designed to point to Ukraine, because the Polish company was owned by Ukrainians, or maybe it might just look as Ukrainians. As somebody joked in here, a bunch of Ukrainians did it. So it's a research team, said to be a research team from Germany. German government investigation is still going on. So they say in the article there's no final consensus. It also says the EU secret police sources have a theory that it was Ukrainian commandos, or a pro-Ukrainian group. So that's just a theory. They're just reporting a theory. You got all kinds of theories, like, sure. Anyway, that's the facts. They found a sailboat, was rented in northern Germany, passed through the area, was left on an island in a messy condition, and traces of explosives were found. And the people who rented it used a fake passport. They said a van dropped off equipment before it left. A research team took a sailboat out. So I don't know, maybe. There's other sources all come back to this. So like The Guardian is a decent English language version of that. But The Guardian reported on March 7th, I'm going to quote from it, German investigators believe the attack on the pipelines was carried out by a team of 6 people using a yacht. And they said, again, quote, European and U.S. intelligence office officials have obtained tentative intelligence to suggest a pro-Ukrainian saboteur group may have behind the bombing. Now, you have to pull that out, right? May have been behind. Sure. A handy trick when you see somebody write may is just stick a not after it, because it doesn't change the meaning. So you could read that same sentence without changing the meaning, although you will change the emotional response to it, to saying a Ukrainian saboteur group may not have been behind the bombing. Doesn't change the meaning. They throw in the may in there. They also said U.S. intelligence officials have obtained tentative intelligence to suggest. So I read a sentence like that, I just go, why did you even write that? You're not actually telling me anything. You're just telling me what somebody's feelings are, really. So either say something or don't bother. And then the sources the Guardian cites are the New York Times, which if you read the New York Times, they cite Die Zeit, and then they cite Die Zeit, which I just talked about. So anyway, that's as close as I get to the original source, which is the German FBI and Attorney General's office. Like, I ain't going to get to talk to them, and I don't know German. But anyway, I hope my translation from the German is helpful for that. So another question here about the sailboat. I just want to read. Mary says, the story is all a lie. one of many, I believe, Cy Hurst, a real journalist. Thanks for talking about this, an act of war by Biden. Sounds that way. We'll wait for confirmation. Yeah, I'm not going to say we know, but as I said, the sniff test points towards them. So as far as this other story, I want to pull this thread through a little further for people. So how many people here have gone scuba diving? I've done some little bit. I'm not experienced, but I've been to 60 feet, 70 feet, maybe. Breathing regular pressurized air. Like, I know enough about it to know that 250 feet is a tough thing. So anyway, I talked to somebody I know, another person I know and trust, who happens to be a commercial diver who has a Coast Guard 50 or 100 ton master's license, captain's master's license, also has crossed oceans on recreational sailboats. So anyway, somebody that would know a lot about this. This is a guy who taught underwater construction so anyway, and has been a commercial diver all his life. So I said, is this plausible? That's the question. Could this sabotage be pulled off by a small team from a 50-foot sailboat, a small boat, a sailboat even? Why wouldn't you pick a powerboat? Anyway, is that even possible? So the answer, lots of skepticism, but the answer is it's possible. And he explained how you could do it. He started by saying, this is not advisable. Like, this is a not advised thing, but it is possible. He said there are wreck divers who go down to 250 feet. You need special mixes. So, of course you can't just breathe pressurized air like normal diving. You need multi-tank scuba setups. They use helium and oxygen mix. So you need a tank of pure oxygen and a tank of helium. You adjust the mix as you go down. Probably have to stage bottles at different depth, maybe stage bottles at the ground, at the bottom. A very short bottom time as far as working. To move explosives around, he said it's possible to push them. You drop bottles of regular air and you inflate bags on the bottom. You lower explosives and then you can push them around in scuba gear. You inflate, lift them with bags to neutral buoyancy. It's possible to move it around. The U.S. Navy dive tables cover that depth. It is with scuba gear. Again, you need helium and pure oxygen. You can't, nitrogen narcosis is a huge risk at this. Very easy to kill yourself doing this at the kind of pressures. Also, coming back up, you have to do, if you don't have a decompression chamber and, a full-size decompression chamber doesn't fit on a sailboat. Although they do make bags that they use for planes sometimes. It's possible they could have had one of those airplane decompression bags on the boat and used it there. Or more likely they did in water decompression stops. So you come up to certain depths. For example, you get to 60 feet and you just switch to pure O2. Probably have a bottle stage there and you stay there for a long time and make sure you're totally cleared out. That's how you can live through this. This is elite level divers. This is not like regular divers. Like, I ain't trying this. So we're talking highly trained, experienced. If they lived, they managed to plant 4 explosives on the 4 different pipelines, and 3 of them worked. So yeah, I'd say whoever did this is good. To do it from a sailboat, I'm super skeptical there. But anyway, the commercial diver I talked to said it is possible. Really strict procedures. Got to follow really, really strict dive procedures. But it is possible. The bottom time is a problem here. The way it works is you're very limited. You got to follow the tables. They call them the dive tables. You have to be very, very careful. If it says 4 minutes here and you don't want to do 6, like, you got to be paying a lot of attention to do this. And supposedly 2 guys did it with 2 assistants. One of the estimates on the explosives required, I think I said it earlier, was 2,000 pounds. That's we're talking significant. Again, 4-foot diameter pipes, 1.5 inch steel with 2 to 4 inches of concrete. Yeah, that's a shaped charge. Seymour Hersh said they use C4. Yeah, something significant. Anyway, the conclusion here, this is really heavily based on talking to the diver. It would be risky, difficult. These are my words. Done from the yacht is tough. Done in secret is tough. You got to get away. It's high-level diving skills, like definitely high-level diving skills. Utmost caution, careful procedures. You got to really know what you're doing and be strict following the procedures. There's some top-level equipment. I don't think I mentioned it, but you got to find these pipes. It's open ocean. But there is equipment. The guy I talked to said that, mining companies and other contractors that do major work in the ocean, they have equipment that can locate pipes. And secondly, the pipe location may be available. Like big oil companies probably know. There's probably contractors, private entity contractors in the area that do sea work, offshore oil rigs or whatever. I don't know what's in there, but out there. But yeah, the people who put the pipeline down, their construction company, they have equipment that could find it. And there's versions of that could go on a sailboat. I'll take it. So it's possible to find it. It's also possible the location is publicly known. I don't know. I didn't check into that. But it is possible the GPS coordinates of the whole thing are publicly known, and they were able to pick a spot. So finding it's possible, doing the dives possible, bringing the equipment on a 2,000 foot, on a 50-foot sailboat is possible. You need a crane. But yeah, there's cranes on 50-foot sailboats, small cranes for picking up dinghies and stuff. So it'd be possible to lower explosives to the bottom. It's possible to scuba to that depth. So anyway, it's possible. I'll leave it at that. The reports that I've seen where this is impossible, no way they could do it, or I think that's wrong. Also, the reports is saying obviously these guys did it. That's also wrong. So I'm going to leave that one as not doing well on the sniff test, but possible. Somebody, Mary says, last comment, how more likely that Cy's story is true? If you're asking odds, I don't know. It certainly makes far more sense to me for a bunch of reasons that I've just been rambling on about for an hour. But yeah, I don't know. It's more likely. I'll just leave it at that. Hopefully that satisfies Mary's question. It's more likely that Seymour Hersh's story is true than the Russians did it, or 6 people from a rented sailboat did it. That's fair. I don't think I can get kicked off YouTube for saying that. Anyway, and I say in the article, in part 2 of the article, part 2 of the article is published now. I'm going to put the links to the article now. So anyway, part 3 of the article, which hopefully be published tomorrow, I go through this, really answering Mary's question, where I kind of go through the possibilities. So what I said, and I'll stand by this, as far as the Russia did it story, the first story that, and you still hear that occasionally, I think that's kind of in the nil possibility. It's pretty close to 0. It doesn't make sense. I'm not entirely discounting it, but it fails the sniff test horribly. It would be stupid. Putin doesn't seem to be stupid. You might not be willing to call him brilliant, but he's a good tactician. You can't deny that. He seems reasonably astute. He certainly has. I can't imagine anybody would think that Putin isn't far more mentally capable of tactics than the United States president. Like, that's obvious. All you got to do is watch one news conference of Putin and one news conference of Biden, and you'd be like, oh, yeah, this guy Putin, he knows what he's doing. So anyway, it would be stupid. The income from that is huge. So anyway, I think that's a nil possibility, but I guess I won't say I discount it, because maybe, I don't know. The small German research team on the rented sailboat story, like I said, I'll just say I'm quite skeptical. It's possible. I believe from what I've researched, it's technically possible. The secrecy requirements are tough. The technical requirements are tough. The operation is very difficult. Not advisable, is what the diver said. But yeah, you could probably get away with doing that without killing yourself at the scene. And then how they blew them up later, I don't know, maybe timers. Who knows? So on the sniff test, if you want to grade it, Mary, I'll just put a grade on it. I'll say that's a D- on the sniff test, but maybe not quite an F. But yeah, I think but it's possible. People get D- do graduate college occasionally. So yeah, you can't discount it because it is possible. Why the German government isn't pursuing it harder? It seems to me they're not pursuing it all that hard. Yeah, I'd quote the German government's responses. Oh well, scheiß happens. But no, they are looking into it, and maybe they'll find more. Who knows? And as far as the U.S. Navy and CIA operation done during a NATO exercise, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Of the 3 reported culprits possible so far, it comes from an investigative journalist with a long decades of history of exposing corruption and criminal activity by the U.S. government, with a well-known, who knows who they are, but lots of highly placed and people in the trenches, sources inside the U.S. government that are willing to talk to him. The history, like the My Lai massacre, I read that he broke that story. That's an interesting source. That's who came out with that. And his stuff was later proven true. So this situation where he's being vilified, attacked, as making the whole thing up. He's got a history of exactly that, being vilified and attacked and being accused of making things up. And then a year later, 2 years later, it comes out that, oops, yep, it was all true. So yeah, there's a reasonable chance that will happen here. We'll see. As far as the sniff test, like the U.S. government, the U.S. Navy, the CIA, Biden, Victoria Nuland, the State Department, Norway's involvement, done rape off a Danish island, like, yeah, all that stuff passes the sniff test with flying colors. So yeah, the sniff test, this one has an A. I'll rate this one as an A. But who knows? We find out. Maybe we'll find out it's a 4th culprit that hasn't even been accused yet, that nobody's thought of. I don't know. Maybe Taiwan did it. Who knows? So you have to look at this, what makes sense for now, and then we sit back and watch. So as far as the investigator, like the investigations, the detective that's assigned to this case, you have to look at motive. You have to look at who's capable. You have to look at who was nearby. So those 3 questions: U.S. government, U.S. government, U.S. government. So you should bring them in for questioning. As a minimum, I think it would be interesting to ask that possible suspect that they should be considered a suspect. You have to bring them in for questioning. If they didn't do it, there's a chance that they know who did it, and maybe you could get some information. So, but what isn't happening is the U.S. government is not being questioned here. I don't see any evidence that they're trying to find out. The U.S. government is doing all kinds of stuff to cover up the story, to pretend to distract people, holding up shiny objects in front of the U.S. public. The big story is the China balloon. Now the big story is the invasion of Taiwan. The big story is the Russian invasion. It's like they don't care about this. So that's what I see from the U.S. government. What I don't see is a full-blown investigation by mainstream journalists. Like, I don't see it at all. Where is all this? You'd think people would be all over this. The guy who brought this story out, Seymour Hersh, he can't even publish where he used to. He's publishing on Substack. That tells you where this is at. He used to be a primary investigative journalist for the New Yorker for decades. Like, that's who we're talking about. He's writing on Substack now. And frankly, you got to listen to podcasts on Rumble or whatever, read articles on Uncover DC if you want to know what, want to hear the story here. I don't think we're still waiting for the mainstream journalists to do it. So the German government is investigating, but I don't rate that as all that serious. Given the crime here, it was a sabotage, it was an act of war against Germany that caused, roughly, tripling of energy prices in some areas, and firewood to be a trending topic. Like, they should be looking into this. Like, we should be hearing all kinds of reports of what's going on. And so far, all they have is this boat with some explosives, and 6 people rented it with fake passports. Okay, maybe. I had another quote from the Russian ambassador. I should put this one up, but just trust me, I'll put the link for it. So this was after the UN vote. So that's kind of how I started here. I'll end with this and let you all go. Sorry, I think I've been rambling on for a long time. I don't even want to look and see how long the show is so far. But this is a big story that isn't being covered. So that's why I split the article I wrote. Had ended up 4,000 words. I had to split it into 3 parts to publish on Uncover DC. So yeah, part 2 is coming out today, or I think it was already released, I think. And then part 3 is going to be published tomorrow. So Russian UN ambassador to the UN, Vasily Nebenzia, he said, and it's in the press release, liar, liar, as we say, liar, liar, pants on fire. I should put that up, right? I could find it if the people want to wait. It's in the press release. Let me pop that one up. I think it's hilarious. So yeah, this is in response to the vote. So it's Mr. Nebenzia here. You see my mouse here. Noting that the national investigations without his country's participation may last years, he asked the representative of the United States what was so predetermined in the text his country put forth, adding, quote, as we say, liar, liar, pants on fire. If the U.S. wanted to bring, end quote, if the United States wanted to bring perpetrators to justice, they would act differently, he said, adding that the vote represented a litmus test to see if the rules would be upheld and if responsibility would be accorded for the egregious acts. Quote, today's votes prove that our former Western partners do whatever they want and get away with it, end quote, adding that his country would do what it could to counter the ongoing vicious circle of the West, which is preventing the council from carrying out its functions. Anyway, I thought it was hilarious that in the United Nations press release, they quote the Russian ambassador to the U.S. ambassador as saying, as we say, liar, liar, pants on fire. That's a good one. I was amused. So anyway, there's a possibility our tax dollars were used to secretly attack Russia and Germany in an act of war. There's a distinct possibility here. The U.S. government does not appear to be, they do not want to let the UN look into it. They're not looking into it themselves, as far as we can do, as far as I can tell. They don't want to talk about it. They just discount it as if we just let all this go away. But something happened here. Something really serious happened here. It's an act of war. It's a major act of war. Again, we're talking 16 billion euros in property, cutting off half of the natural gas into Germany. This is a serious thing. So did Washington, D.C. cause like an energy shortage in Germany, the largest gas leak in history? As Fit American asks here, where are the environmentalists? As I said earlier, if you aren't here, the natural gas released, methane is the very serious. It's worse than CO2. It's the biggest component of natural gas. The methane released was equivalent to the greenhouse gas emissions of 5.5 million cars for a year. So yeah, where are the environmentalists? We don't see. I don't actually see too many environmentalists yelling about this either. Anyway, did the U.S. government do this? I don't know. The sniff test, in summary, the Russians No. 6 people from a rented sailboat? Maybe. Possible, but that doesn't sound likely. Or the U.S. Navy and the CIA with the help of the Denmark military. Those are the 3 possibilities. So, or somebody else. The 4th possibility is somebody else that hasn't been announced yet. But it happened in September, and those are the only 3 culprits we've heard about. So, of those 3, how would you rate them? If I did a poll, who do you think would win? Anyway, I want to know who sabotaged Nord Stream despite Washington, D.C.'s silence and despite their efforts in preventing me from knowing it. So this is a good one. This is a whodunit. So whodunit. All right. Mary says bingo. Yeah. And huge story. We should keep talking about it. I'll keep talking about it. Anyway, I'll post the links. Check out Uncover DC if you want to see the first 2 articles. And I pretty much talked about all 3 in here. But the first 2 of those are now published. So the first one was published yesterday, which I showed earlier. And the second one published while the show was going on. I saw the thing pop up on my email. Anyway, check out uncoverdc.com. And they uncover all kinds of DC stuff. The name is a great name for that site. So it's one of the places I write for outside of Unsafe Space. Also, you can check out Unsafe Space Substack, where I also write. Anyway, I'll end this with Fit American says, Bush started a war and then painted pics of all the wounded. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what happened. So, yeah, Mary, Hirsch's stuff is in Substack. The 2 articles I did it here. I posted here his 2 articles, the one from February 8th where he exposed it, and then the one in March 6 weeks later called The Cover Up, which goes through how they're covering it up. So anyway, G-Man. All right, I'm going to end with G-Man's. He says, if we were playing Clue, we would have won 20 turns ago. It was the U.S. with an explosion at the bottom of the sea. It's a game. I think they are playing a game. And we'll find out who the culprit is someday, I hope. I hope it doesn't take as long as it's taking to find out the full extent of the CIA's involvement in Kennedy's assassination. But who knows? This might take 50 years to come out too. It's a big deal though. And why they aren't talking about it and why the U.S. government doesn't want us to know, I don't know. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching Rebel Civics on Unsafe Space. I'll post the links to the articles and all. But yeah, if you want to find my articles, just go to uncoverdc.com. All one word, uncoverdc.com. Seymour Hersh, go to Seymour Hersh Substack. Substack/Seymour Hersh. One article was February 8th. The other was mid-March called Cover Up. Good story. So yeah, read all that stuff. And I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.
This production was made possible through the generous support of our members. To join our community, visit unsafespace.com. Unsafe Space is an online publication for individualists interested in subverting authoritarianism and ushering in the next Enlightenment. For biting analysis and nourishing composition, or to sign up for our weekly news brief, The Abstract, visit unsafespace.com. Thanks for joining us today.
Warning. This is an unsafe space. Dangerous ideas have been detected. The content of this production has not been authorized for distribution on Apple devices. The following co-conspirators are hereby uninvited to Klaus Schwab's Winter Solstice Party. Please be advised that CBS News has paused activity on Unsafe Space while it continues to assess security. Central bank digital currency is a safe and secure way to protect you from Sam Bankman-Fried. If you think about it, No one should be allowed to express opinions. But don't. Think about it, I mean. That's not your job. Thinking has been scientifically proven to be less efficient than compliance. Science, scientific, and scientifically are registered trademarks of the World Economic Forum. Unauthorized use is prohibited. Computer voice courtesy. Never mind, that last line is misinformation. Please disregard it and return to your safe space immediately. There will be cake.